Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, leadership coach, exited agency founder, and author of the book Human Powered. And on my podcast, my guests spill their secrets about how they've created high-performing teams and how this has translated into running a high-performing business. Today, I am super excited to have Vanella Jackson on the podcast today. Vanella, hello, lovely to see you.
Hello, Trenton. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for asking me to do this.
Well, I genuinely, I'm very honoured and excited to have you here because I just want to introduce you to everyone listening, because I don't think if you were to introduce yourself, I've known you for a while, you're quite a modest person. I want to kind of do justice to what you've achieved in your career. So I think you've worked like all your career agency side, and that culminated in you being the global CEO at Hall & Partners for around 13 years, quite the tenure. You know, you're running a $130 million strategic brand consultancy. You somehow found time to be the chair of the Market Research Society at the same time. You've won multiple awards like Sunday Times Best Company to Work For. You've received Women of the Year award. I mean, what an incredible career and what incredible stuff you did at Hall & Partners. So I've got so many things I want to ask you, Vanella, so much that I want to know and so much we can benefit from learning through what you've achieved. But yeah, let's kind of start high level. Like, you know, you ran Hall & Partners as global CEO, a massive global business for 13 years. You know, how do you keep that kind of business on that scale high performing?
Well, it's funny, you know, even listening to you describe it as a massive global business, because it never really felt like that. It felt like a small team, all committed, all getting, you know, all liking each other and all clear about what we wanted to achieve together, fighting the good fight and having a lot of fun along the way.
I really like that. Okay, let's deep dive into some of those things you just say. So big business, but it still felt like a small team. You're committed to each other. You all like each other. How do you get the team behaving that way?
Well, I think it is because you do pick the right people. You pick the people who have ambition and drive and energy to succeed, and people who care passionately about what they do. And if you bring those people together, it's very easy to get them to align around, you know, a shared vision. You know, we felt like a small company because a lot of our competitors were significantly bigger than ourselves. And so keeping that entrepreneurial spirit alive was really important.
That's again really interesting. So despite the fact that you are a big business, and I know it didn't feel like that to you, you're still kind of keeping that entrepreneurial spirit alive. So yeah, again, I want to deep dive into that. Like how do you keep that going in a kind of larger business?
Well, I think it's true that any business has to keep moving forward, doesn't it? I mean, it's the adage that if you're a shark, you die if you don't move forward. And I think it's important that you seeking out the new, constantly innovating, and are excited about the new. And if you have that in your heart, then you invent new things and people pick up on it and feel that. So I think it was our entrepreneurial spirit was driven by our appetite for the new.
Interesting. I really like that. Appetite for the new. It's almost like an internal slogan that any one of us could steal and use within our businesses. And I guess that's obviously got to come from the top, and from the leader yourself has obviously got to believe that in your core and, you know, reflect that out back into the business.
Well, I think it's really interesting, isn't it, when you say from the top? I mean, it's a team game, isn't it? It's about the people that you surround yourself with and about having everybody aligned to what you're trying to achieve together. And therefore, it is about what you create together and share together and move forward. So I don't think it is just about leadership. I think it's about being, you know, having a strong leadership team, definitely, but about being open to each other's ideas.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. About, as you're saying, that getting that team going. What if the kind of opposite happens? And you get kind of toxic rock stars in there. Did that ever happen to you?
Of course, because every leader has to face human nature. You'll always have people that drift out and are unaligned. And I think the challenge is when you see that is to face it and to confront it, but not in an aggressive way, almost in a curiosity, with curiosity, because it's important to try and understand what is driving that behaviour. Are they what do they want? And so I think it's important to have an honest conversation that is, that you've observed the behaviour and you want to understand, and to genuinely seek out what they're looking for and what would make that better. Now, I'm not saying that in having that conversation, every toxic person is pulled round, but generally people like to tell you what's bugging them.
And it's like you say, you're going in with an open mind. You're not going in kind of accusing them of you're doing this, this, and this. You're going in out of curiosity, like, hey, what's going on for you?
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. But I do think you have to be very clear about the behaviour that is not working. I don't think it's just about avoiding that. I think you have to be and confront them with that behaviour and explain why it's not appropriate.
Interesting. Have you got can you think of an example of that? Did you have to do that many times? Can you think of a time when you had to do that?
Well, there are always challenges. Running a business it's all about people, isn't it? And keeping people on side and aligned is one of the biggest leadership challenges. Well, I think it is what leadership is all about. It's about the relationships that you strike and build with your team and everybody in the business. I mean, it's not just about the people that you surround yourself with. It's every single person in the business that needs to feel valued and supported.
Interesting. So, and you've got, you had a team of hundreds. So how do you go about making that happen, across so many people, making everyone feel valued and supported?
I think you have to have a genuine interest in people and everyone who works for you. And that's not just being interested in their work and what they're doing and how they're contributing to the company, but also in relation to them and who they are and what they care about and what are they passionate about. So you have to try and build all those relationships within the business and find what motivates them, what excites them about what they're doing, and this phrase that I carried with myself all the time was, how can they learn, stretch and grow?
Interesting. That's another, you're kind of coming up with a lot of fantastic phrases. You started off with the appetite for the new, which if you haven't already, I might go and trademark because that's a very nice one. And then this one as well, learn, stretch and grow. So I definitely want to explore more about that. Tell me more about how you get people to do that. Well,
everybody should have an appetite to learn, because that's what makes life interesting, isn't it? It's what makes your heart and soul sing, really, if you're learning things, if you're learning new things. But I think where you learn the most is when you do things or rise to the challenge of things that make you feel slightly uneasy, and maybe go beyond what you think you can do. And I think that's where the genuine excitement comes, and the real stretch is what really motivates people. So that's where the growing comes from. So it sort of, follows each other. Learn, stretch and grow is a way of being really excited and motivated at work.
I really like that phrase. It's like you say, it's like a sequential thing. You learn something, then you have to kind of stretch in order to be able to do it. And as a result of doing that, you grow as a person.
Yes, that's the tension. So in every relationship or person that you have a conversation with, you're looking for that. You're looking for the opportunity for learning, stretching and growing.
I want to talk about learn, stretch and grow a bit more. I love this as a kind of mantra. Tell me a bit more, like how do you create a culture around that concept of learn, stretch and grow and make sure people are happy to do it?
Well, one of the things that we did was introduce something called in the moment feedback. Because I think the challenge with appraisals is that, you know, the conversation often comes 6 months on from whenever a certain thing happened and where there was an opportunity to improve. So I think the idea of giving feedback in the moment that says, that was great, that was great, that was great, but this is the one area you could improve on, learn, stretch and grow, was really important. And I think that created a culture of honesty and openness and a willingness to support each other, even if it was difficult to have those conversations. And that I think supported our growth.
No, I think that's brilliant. I mean, you're right. Doing like a 6-month or annual appraisal, everything's so out of context by the time it comes to you. So doing that in the moment. And I guess if you've got that culture of, you know, it's honesty and openness, but it's like, you know, people approaching those conversations, kind of like you talked earlier, in a, you know, not in an accusatory way, but more in a kind of inquisitive way. And
Absolutely. And I read something about this as a way of motivating people that I thought was really interesting, that in order for that to really sink in and motivate people, you need to give them 3 pieces of good feedback to 1 constructive piece of feedback that is helpful for them to improve. And I love that 3 to 1.
Yeah, that's great. That's really lovely, because then it's very easy for us, as perhaps more senior people, to look at things that people are doing and be like, oh, you did this, you know, would you just do it a little bit differently and move on? And that can be quite disheartening. And we're sometimes guilty of doing that to people who are superstars and of actually like upsetting them a bit because we're only focusing on the things that they did wrong when 90% of what they did was actually really good.
Yes, I think it's very easy in the rush of modern business to forget how important feedback and honest conversations with people are, and taking the time to do that. Because if you can motivate somebody and excite them, then it'll pay back in, you know, over and over.
That makes sense. It's like a short-term cost in terms of your time. You need to invest more time by having these conversations with people, but do that and you get the payback. You get people who are motivated. It creates a culture of, you know, people being excited about their jobs, wanting to do well, ultimately high performing, which then leads to the high performing business.
Indeed.
Wow, it's great. It's like almost like you just kind of deep dive into this, and it's just, as you're saying, it's just about the people and keeping everyone motivated and putting process and practice in place, like the 3 to 1 ratio for in the moment feedback, and that just percolates across the whole business.
Yes, I think I think business is about people. Ultimately, it's about, you know, relationships with clients and relationships with the people who work for you, and how to build those to be the best they can be.
That makes total sense. Okay, and then, you know, again, running a business with a few hundred people, you know, how do you keep in touch with what's really going on across all the, you know, all the corners of that?
Well, I think you have to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth, however uncomfortable it is. So, so I always thought about, well, who are my allies? Who are the people that who are going to tell me, and I might not like the answer. And I think that can be somebody at every single level. And it's important, I think, to hear, have an ally at every level in the company. One of my strongest allies in the business was the fabulous lady who sat on reception. She saw everything. She had eyes over everybody. She heard all the gossip. But she would tell me when I was getting it wrong really clearly. And,
Wow.
you know, that's a really good thing because it means you can act. And I think, you know, as a leader, it's important to recognise that people won't always tell you the truth. And so it's really important to go and seek it out.
What you described about, you know, getting allies in the business, and obviously you have to create a culture for them in those conversations of psychological safety. So, you know, if your receptionist had one time said to you, Vanella, you're doing this wrong, and you said, God, what are you talking about? No, I'm not. That would have been the very last time that she told you something you were doing wrong.
That's right. And psychological safety is an interesting phrase, isn't it? It's building trust. And how do you do that? And it's critically important. And therefore, I think you have to bring as much of yourself and your sort of authenticity to every relationship that you have, because I think people can smell authenticity, and if you're not real, then you won't get the real them back.
Yeah, I love that. Again, authenticity. And again, this is you. I know you talked about, well, it's not leadership, it's teamwork, but you are the leader, and people follow your example. And if you are truly authentic, then you're giving everyone else permission to be truly authentic.
Well, that's certainly a philosophy of leadership that I encouraged across my leadership team, because I had a group of people all leading officers, and I think every single one of them were inspiring, authentic leaders. And I do think that's really what you need, what business needs more than anything else. Because then people will be prepared to follow if they feel excited and inspired and that they believe in something worthwhile.
And how do you, like, thinking about what you just said, you've got your leaders in offices, all over the globe, and you're doing your bit, you're being authentic, you're running a culture, with the sort of things that you've spoken about. How do you make sure everyone stays motivated, like, as much of the time as possible, and everyone's always pointing in the same direction?
Well, I always think that's the task of leadership, isn't it? To get everybody to point in the same direction. And it's the role of having a clear purpose and vision for what you're trying to achieve, and a shared strategy to get there. And then ensuring that strategy has clear implementation plans, and everyone knows how they individually are going to contribute to the success of the business. If you have all of that in place, that's one tick. But then it's about constantly monitoring it, ensuring that everybody is still connected to what we're trying to achieve. And I think it's about continuous communication. It's very easy to assume that because you've said something once, or you've done a fantastically slick vision and values and strategy presentation, that everybody understands. I think repeated communication, consistent language is critical in building culture. And so knowing your story and consistently communicating so that everybody then feels on the same page.
There's so many things you're saying here that make total sense. I want to unpick a few of these. Some really nice stuff in here. I think many business leaders who are listening, I think you can relate to what Vanella just said, in that you cannot just say something once and expect it to sink in. So tell me a bit more about this. How do you keep that going? Keep saying the same message, keep the consistent language, even though it might sound boring to you, what do you need to do to just kind of keep that going?
Interesting you picked up on the word language, and I think language is really important. It's almost like internal branding of your vision, mission, strategy. And I think it is the consistent phrases and words that you use that help build and support culture. And it's a pattern of different layers of communication through the organisation. So, we'd have regular quick fire meetings, we'd have, town hall meetings. It's how do you want to communicate, and what is the structure for that? And it's as much about informal communication and systems, all the way through to the big presentations, meetings and conversations. And I think it's very easy to assume that people know their place in the strategy and what they need to contribute. And I learnt pretty early on that not everybody could see their role in what we were describing. And it wasn't until that we actually described how each and every person was going to contribute and how their specific role made a difference that we really saw traction and movement.
That's super interesting. And again, I just want to reflect that back because I think that's such a key point. You've talked about vision, mission, strategy, and most businesses work on that. I do say most. There is a surprising number of businesses that don't spend too much time on this. But for you, it sounds like that was key, and that it's not just coming up with it at a high level and, banging the drum and having that internal branding about it, using the consistent phrases. You have to actually get down into the detail and make sure every single person in the business understands why and how their job is contributing to that overarching vision.
I think that's right. And I think it's challenging when, we're all very different. And I tend to be a big picture person with, and excitable about new things. And detail and follow through are not necessarily my strengths. So I think it is important in leadership to make sure that in your team you build people around you. In the team that you build around you, you build the skills that you don't have. And I found it incredibly helpful having people who had strong organisational and implementation skills that were looking at systems that supported and helped us deliver what we were trying to deliver.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm guessing that you can say that you find that very valuable, and obviously you did. And I wonder, there's probably some occasions where you're like, but here's something we can do, and it's exciting. And then there's someone else sitting there, but Vanella, how? We have these 10 other initiatives running. How will we find time for that?
Yes. I think if I learnt one thing running the business for as long as I did, it was single-minded focus on the one thing can never be undervalued. And as somebody who likes lots of new things and new initiatives, I often got, I'm energized by moving on to the next thing. But I would say to all leaders, really, the focus on the one thing that you want to achieve is likely to make much more of an impact than the multi initiatives thing. And I know anybody who's watching this who worked in my business will be smiling because I know that I made those mistakes along the way. But I think, and so for me, inspiring clients is the one thing every business, if you're on the agency side, needs to deliver.
Interesting. You talk about clients. Let's talk a bit more about clients, actually, as you just brought that in, because we've talked a bit about, getting your senior team to be, aligned around the vision, getting them high performing, getting their departments high performing. Then how do we translate that into being high performing with clients?
Well, some of the principles about relationships that I talked about at the beginning apply equally to clients. I mean, you need to know and understand what they're going through, what their issues are, what their challenges are. You need to have a good understanding of their business. And you need to identify how you can best help them. And that might be something very practical or something that you can bring to the table that will unlock something for them. Or it might be a question of how you can help them personally and support them in a completely unexpected way. The question is, what you have to do is you have to listen hard and see the opportunity to help. And that's it.
Interesting. It feels a bit like it ties into your attitude towards your team, that you've got to, it's a people thing. You get to know them, you get to understand what their goals and drivers are and the things that ultimately will give them satisfaction and fulfillment. And it sounds like it's the same with clients.
Well, I think it's the same with everybody. And I think it is about the listening hard. And I think too often when you go as an agency person to meet a client, there is a temptation to sell. And by selling, I mean talk at and talk about yourself all the time. And I really try to encourage people to sit on their hands and be quiet. And I used to say that at least 70% of the conversation has to be you listening in a sales meeting. I mean, one of the things that we asked people not to do was take a credentials deck, because a credentials deck sucks all the oxygen out of a potential meeting. It provides a barrier to a real connection with your client, and it stops you listening. It puts you on transmit. And when there's nothing more boring than transmit.
So you're running an agency and you banned credentials decks.
Yes, because they're boring. They're boring. And
yes,
they're
not boring for the people presenting, but for the client, it's boring.
It's boring because it doesn't connect to their agenda and what they need. And you can't. It's all about fit, isn't it? You can't connect if you don't understand, what their agenda is and what they need and how to help. And it's all about seeking information to learn how to help.
Like you say, 70% of the time just doing listening. So you can then work out that 30% you can spend telling them, well, based on what you told me, here's how I can solve your problems and move things forward for you.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really great. It's really interesting. Like there are two words that are kind of running through my mind at the moment, Vanella, and it's not something that you've mentioned. The two words are self-awareness. And the reason those are running through my mind right now is you've talked so much about the things that you were doing, but so much of it you've talked about how you as a person and your own strengths and weaknesses and your own styles and ways of doing things, and the awareness that the way that you did things is your way, and the understanding of what your way was, and the understanding that there are lots of other ways and they are equally valid and you need to work equally with those people. So I guess what I'm getting to is, how do you get to that point where you understand yourself that well and you're aware of what you do and how you behave, and you've got the awareness that's not necessarily always the right way?
Well, I think it's about everybody's individual journey as they grow. And for my own, through my career, I spent the first half of my career looking at other people and beating myself up for not being as organised or as detail orientated and things like this. And it wasn't until I kind of learned to have sufficient confidence to play to my strengths. And this idea of everybody's got something to contribute and they contribute best when they're playing to their strengths is really, really important. And once I embraced that for myself, recognize what I could bring to the table in any conversation with clients and in any interaction, I felt liberated to be myself. And once I was liberated to be myself, I could help others be liberated too.
Wow, I mean that's really powerful. That's amazing. It said it sounds like you spent the first half of your career beating yourself up about your weaknesses, and everyone's weaknesses are always also strengths, right? If you're someone who tends to be not organized and not into the detail, it's usually because you're a big picture thinker. You can't be both. And so many of us spend our time, as you described in the first half of your career, beating ourselves up for the things that we're not good at and not celebrating ourselves for the things we are good at. So
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. Sorry.
So that's all good. How did you make that transition then from beating yourself up for what you're not good at to celebrating and acknowledging your strengths?
Well, that's why I say it's a journey, because I think you start to see, it's about the feedback you start to get. And when you do things right, you get some more positive feedback, so it builds your confidence. But what I was going to say is that confidence is easy to undervalue as something that is important to everybody. And I think low confidence, particularly young people coming through the business, is a real issue for business leaders. And it's about how an organisation can build confidence in order to inspire. And I think it's often underestimated how lack of confidence holds people back and is actually a real business issue in terms of holding the overall business back until you can release people from their lack of confidence. And, it should be an absolute goal to build confidence in everybody who works for you. And I think that's underestimated as a critical issue.
Kind of last thing I'm going to ask you, I guess, around this is, any particular top tips? How do you, are there any specific things that our listeners can just go and do now to help to just boost confidence levels across people in the business?
Well, I think the thing that jumps to mind for me is still the 3-to-1 in the moment feedback. Just seeing people come alive when you tell them that they've done something absolutely fantastic and why that's so great and how that impacts the business and how it makes a valuable contribution. And you can see the energy come and the motivation come. So I think even just practicing one day where all you do is that and seeing the difference it makes would be a great challenge for people.
Wow, what an amazing action from this, if you're listening, that you can go and do. Just for one day, go around the business and just notice what people are doing, notice the effort they're putting in, and give them positive feedback for that.
I obviously don't expect them to do it for one day only, but I think the concentrated effort on it as an experiment to see the amazing feedback that you'll get will be worthwhile.
Wow, what an amazing next step, Steve. Vanella, thank you. There's some absolutely brilliant insights that you've given here. You've talked about the importance of aligning everyone around the vision and the mission of the business, about the 3-to-1 ratio of positive to constructive feedback, and all the things that you've done to kind of almost at a ground level get people to have that confidence to be high performing, but to do it around that shared vision, so everyone's moving in the same direction, ultimately making the business high performing. So I've known you for a few years and I've learned so many new things today. That's really brilliant. So you ran Hall & Partners as the global CEO for 13 years. You've stepped down now. What do you do with yourself nowadays?
Well, when you step down from a big job, the fear is you'll have nothing to do. But then I should know myself better because I've never been busier. So I'm doing lots and lots of different things. I'm currently sitting on the court of the Marketeurs, the prestigious livery company. I'm working, and I'm really enjoying this, working with a number of entrepreneurs who are doing some really great work. I love that. I'm sitting on a couple of boards as non-execs for one, the British Forces Broadcasting Service, which is an amazing organisation that does fantastic work for motivating our forces. Also, I've dived into education. I love education. So I'm on the board of a multi-academy trust. And then if I have any time left after all of that, I'm pursuing my new passion and new career, I hope, as an artist.
Wow. So not much.
No, not much. But then I've always done a lot. I can't imagine ever not doing a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Vanella, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's been hearing your insights has been absolutely fantastic. So, and thank you for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to join me today.
It's always a joy to talk to you, Trenton. Your energy inspires me, so it's always a joy.
You're too kind. You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.